All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Floyd Mayweather says that the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford in negotiations, he says it's not even close of getting done. So, this is a shocker to me by Floyd Mayweather saying this. So, I'm gonna break it down to y'all. Let's talk about it in this video. King Jr. got another video for y'all. Please share that you like and subscribe to the channel. And also, share the video to get all your latest boxing news. And remember to hit that bell icon to always stay notified as soon as I release the news. With that being said, it looks like the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, according to Floyd Mayweather, is not happening and the negotiations is not even close. But on the other hand, Errol Spence Jr. had posted a few social media posts, says that the fight is close to be getting done. And Errol Spence would have not posted that if it wasn't true. So I don't know who to believe on this scenario. Obviously, a lot of people don't believe Floyd half a 9 out of 10 of the time because half the time he be lying sometimes. But I don't know. I have to go with Errol Spence Jr. on this, in my opinion, because I think the fight is going to be getting done to close. He says it's done getting close. Terence Crawford stated that this fight's going to get done. It's close. They both want to fight each other. And maybe Floyd Mayweather, we know that his brand, his TMT Promotions, is affiliated with the PBC and stuff like that. So maybe Floyd Mayweather has some deeper insight more than Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford on the thing. And maybe he might, well, he's close to Al Heyman, so maybe he might be close than not negotiations, but he's closer to Al Heyman and know the business of boxing as well. And maybe he might find out some things that, hey, look, this fight is not even close and y'all trying to get it done and just saying it. So who knows what goes behind the business of boxing, right? So let's say Errol Spence Jr. is right. The fight is done to be getting close. We know that they was arguably trying to have a historical fight on September, but we know that Gennady Golovkin versus Triple G is going to be happening September 17th. So they're not going to put it in September because they're not going to try to compete with Canelo Alvarez and Triple G. Even though if you did put it on that same month, I still think Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. would do bigger numbers than Canelo Alvarez and Triple G because nobody wants to see that again, in my opinion, because I think Canelo's going to knock out Triple G. That's just my opinion at the end of the day. But they're really trying to put this date in October or November and December, okay? I haven't broken this down, but I'm going to break this down in specific detail for y'all. So the reason why they're aiming for those dates because, well, it would be likely to aim for October because October, we know that Halloween, a lot of people doesn't, well, some people might spend a little bit of chump change on Halloween candy and stuff like that, but the way Halloween is getting played out, in my opinion. And that's a month where you can kind of get the fight, people buzzing, get the last few biggest fights of that year, and boom, you'll get all the revenue. I wouldn't try to push this fight back to November or December because football season starts and other sports starts like college and college football, and then the NFL kicks back up. And so you don't want to compete towards the end of the year because a lot of people is going to be spending a lot of money around holiday time, Thanksgiving food, Christmas gifts, Thanksgiving gifts, whatever the case may be. So you don't want to drag this fight all the way up to December, which I have a feeling they would do that, or they would just push the fight to 2023 and really be trying to compete with the NFL and all the other sporting events that's happening around that time as well. And I feel like if they push this fight back, I feel like that Terence Crawford is going to be at a disadvantage because Terence Crawford is going to be 35 years of age. He's going to be at his absolutely best. We know that once you reach your mid-30s, a lot of things start to slow down. So it's all going to depend on who's doing who in negotiations. Errol Spence Jr. already stated, look, we gonna do whatever it takes to make the fight happen. And he already stated that if this fight doesn't happen, it's not on my end. It's gonna be on Crawford's end. So it's gonna be really up to Crawford to go in that negotiation room and try to get this fight done, or try to negotiate and see which can we do to make this an even playing field. We know that the fight's gonna be in Las Vegas. They both agreed to that and stuff like that. That's all we know for now. So we don't know purse splits or anything like that. But this fight needs to happen, because if you guys don't remember, Terence Crawford fought Sean Porter in November of 2021. So Terence Crawford is nearly going to be out the ring for an entire year. An entire year. And if these two is just talking about fighting, that means Errol Spence is probably going to fight one time in 2022. And Errol Spence is probably going to be, what, 6 to 7 months out the ring? And Terence Crawford is going to be out the ring for a year. And in my opinion, if Errol Spence Jr., if this fight does come to fruition this end of this year or 2023 of next year, people is going to make up the excuse, oh, Errol Spence waited too long for Terence Crawford to fight. Oh, he was just dragging the fight on. Oh, he was just trying to age Crawford out. No, it's because of the business of boxing. Because they're looking at specific details. They're looking at what's going on in the contracts and all this other type of stuff. And you got to take that into a calculation where, you know, you just got to ride with the business of boxing. So I don't know what Floyd Mayweather is talking about in this scenario. And he says that this fight isn't happening. Now, I want to give a shout out to BFTB Boxing. And he said this a long time ago. He said that this fight might not happen. And I'm starting to linger towards that this fight might not happen, because one of the scenarios that I came up with is money. It's going to be because of money. And I hope, well, there was a rumor that they said that Terence Crawford was really pricing himself out and stuff like that, $20 million. And so that has been debunked. That's not true. And according to what Steven Espinoza and stuff, they said everything is in the woodworks. Everything is, they're agreeing to certain terms. They're not agreeing fully, but they're agreeing to certain terms. And we know that Errol Spence Jr. posted saying that the fight is almost getting done. So maybe they might be at that 50% mark where they got to get another 50 more percent where they can make this fight happen. And it's going to be because of one of these guys in negotiations that they're not going to like in this contract, and whatever the case may be. And so you guys remember when the PBC put out that post, would y'all like to see Errol Spence Jr. versus Keith Thurman, right? And Errol Spence Jr. said, absolutely not. You could take that post down, because me and Keith Thurman is not happening. Errol Spence already said if they put him into a position where he's got to fight Keith Thurman, he's going to vacate all them belts and move up to 54. And so that would be a bigger layoff of not the fight not happening. Now, let me tell you guys this. If this fight doesn't happen, this is going to be a scenario where we never got the biggest fight. Well, I wasn't born back then, but a lot of the old school boxing heads told me that everybody wanted to see the biggest fight in the heavyweight division between Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis. This is going to be in that scenario. One of these guys in negotiations, not going to like which happens. I think Errol Spence Jr., in my opinion, I think he'll just give Crawford whatever he wants at this point to make this fight happen. But if Crawford, on the other hand, doesn't like the money, whatever the case may be, if he doesn't want to get the money, or Errol Spence Jr. don't like the money, it's going to be a scenario where one of those guys is going to vacate them belts. And it's going to be where these guys aren't going to fight. And a lot of people, well, few boxing guys say that this fight might not be happening because of Crawford. And I hope that's not the case. Crawford wants this fight. He's been calling for this fight. Errol wants this fight. He's been calling for this fight. I hope it's not the case for both of these guys, because this is going to be one of the biggest letdowns in boxing history once again. And, you know, it's going to be with a scenario where boxing is going to die off. Because if we don't get what we want, what is the point of watching boxing if we ain't going to get the fights? And I believe that if we don't get these big fights back to back to back, well, we want big fights back to back to back, but due to business, it's not going to happen. But if we don't get big fights, at least 2 to 3 big fights out the year, don't be surprised if boxing starts to fade towards 10 to 20 years from now and the sport becomes obsolete because of the scenario like Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford, of the business of boxing not making these 2 fight, which will bring in a lot of revenue for the promotional companies, whatever the case may be, promoters, manager, whoever knows. So with that being said, Floyd Mayweather says that this fight is not even close of getting done. But Errol Spence Jr. says that it's almost ready to be done. So I don't know what to believe at this point. Hopefully we get some confirmed news from Boxing Scene 24, Jake Donovan. Maybe Jake Donovan could have some insight on this if he ever posts some, or whatever these boxing reporters report nowadays. So with that being said, guys, it is what it is. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. This is your boy King Jr. I'm out of here. Peace.